a Gold Thread Studios original series at Yardborn. Episode 1, The Hurricane That Wouldn't Leave. The island is calling its children home. Prologue, The Woman in the Wind. Long before Jamaica learned to hide its miracles, a woman stood barefoot on a mountain and told a hurricane to turn. Her name was Bennett. The year was never written down. Some placed it in the age of muskets and red coats. Others insisted it happened earlier, when the oldest paths through the cockpit country still belonged only to the people who knew how to ask the limestone for permission. What survived was the story. A company of soldiers had followed a maroon settlement into the hills. They brought rifles, chains, and a map drawn by a man who had never listened to the land. Behind them, far out at sea, a hurricane was climbing toward Jamaica. Abina heard both dangers coming. She heard the soldiers' boots through 3 miles of wet earth. She heard the storm speaking inside the roots of the cotton trees. She heard frightened children breathing in the caves behind her. The village captain ordered everyone deeper into the hills. Abina did not move. She carried no gun. Around her neck hung a small pouch containing guinea hen weed, salt, graveyard soil, and a strip of cloth that had belonged to her mother. She raised both hands toward the sky already turning green. The captain shouted that no human being could command a storm. Abina answered that she did not intend to command it. She intended to ask it whom it had come to punish. The first blast of wind bent the trees almost to the ground. Rain swallowed the mountain. The soldiers disappeared beneath a wall of white water, but the caves behind Abina remained dry. By morning, the hurricane had divided around the settlement. One half crossed the northern coast, the other moved south. Between them lay a narrow corridor of untouched forest. Abina was found unconscious at the entrance to the caves. Her hair had turned completely white. She never called another storm. The colonial report described the soldiers as lost to severe weather. It said nothing about the woman on the mountain. The Maroons kept her name. They also kept her warning. One day, Abina said, the island would call all its gifted children at once. When that day came, they must decide whether their power belonged to the people, to those who governed the people, or only to themselves. For more than 2 centuries, Jamaica waited for that day. Then a hurricane stopped moving. Chapter 1, 63 miles. At 4:17 on a Thursday morning, every weather station in Jamaica reported the same impossible thing. Hurricane Kendra had stopped 63 miles southeast of Morant Point. It did not weaken. It did not change direction. It simply remained over the Caribbean Sea, a Category 5 storm, turning in place. The meteorologists at the National Weather Center blamed a damaged satellite. The satellite technicians blamed the radar. The radar engineers checked their machines 3 times and began blaming God. By 5 o'clock, rain was falling in Kingston, Portland, St. Thomas, and St. Mary. By 5:30, the wind had torn zinc from several roofs and pushed seawater across low sections of the eastern coast. Yet the eye of the storm had not moved 1 mile. On every radio station, anxious voices repeated the official warning. Remain indoors. Avoid flooded roadways. Prepare for sudden changes in the hurricane's path. No announcement explained what people most wanted to know. What was holding it there? At Kingston Metropolitan Hospital, Dr. Amoya Bennett had been asking a different question for nearly 16 hours. How many more people could the emergency department hold before the building surrendered? Patients lined the corridor on stretchers beneath leaking ceiling tiles. The backup generator coughed whenever the wind surged. Each time the lights flickered, the waiting room fell silent. Amoya moved through the department with her dark hair beneath a surgical cap and the sleeves of her blue scrubs above her elbows. At 36, she had learned to hide exhaustion behind precision. Then Nurse Simone Walker appeared at the far end of the corridor. Simone did not shout. She only looked at Amoya and pointed toward the ambulance bay. That was enough. The paramedics came through the doors with a boy on the stretcher. He looked no older than 8. Rainwater shone on his face. One paramedic was compressing a ventilation bag, while the other called out the details. Road collision near Harbor View. Vehicle struck a fallen utility pole. 2 adults stable. Child deteriorated during transport. The boy's name was Nico Roden. His pulse was fading. Amoya took control of the resuscitation room. Her voice stayed calm while the storm hammered the windows. The team moved around her with rehearsed speed. Monitors were connected. Medication was prepared. A respiratory therapist adjusted the oxygen. Somewhere beyond the curtain, Nico's mother screamed his name. Then the generator failed. Darkness swallowed the room. For 3 seconds, there was only wind, rain, and the thin electronic cry of machines losing power. Emergency lights glowed red along the floor. The monitor restarted. Nico's heartbeat did not. Amoya placed both hands on his chest. She had done the same thing hundreds of times. There was nothing unusual about the pressure of her palms or the desperate calculation moving through her mind. What changed was the heat. It rose from somewhere beneath the boy's ribs and entered her fingers. Amoya tried to pull away. Her muscles would not obey. The room vanished. For one impossible instant, she could see Nico from the inside. She saw the bruised lung struggling to open. She saw blood where blood should not be. She saw the frightened flicker of a heart running out of time. And she understood that she could take it. Not repair it, not erase it. Take it. The choice formed inside her without language. Amoya pulled. Pain exploded beneath her ribs. She heard someone call her name. The red emergency lights flared gold. Nico's body arched beneath her hands. Then the boy inhaled. It was a deep, violent breath, the kind taken by someone breaking the surface of the sea. The monitor found his heartbeat. Amoya stumbled backward. Nico's oxygen level climbed. The swelling along his chest faded before the team's eyes. Bruising that had darkened his skin began to recede. At the same moment, an invisible fist crushed Amoya's right lung. She struck the floor on one knee. Simone caught her before her head hit the tiles. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Nico opened his eyes. He looked directly at Amoya and whispered, "You found me." Then Dr. Amoya Bennett collapsed. 3 floors above the emergency department, a security camera recorded the entire event. The camera belonged to the hospital. The signal did not. At 5:42 that morning, the recording was copied to a server beneath the Ministry of National Security. A red marker appeared over Kingston on a digital map of Jamaica. Chapter 2, The Man Who Heard Too Much. Malik Campbell heard the red marker appear. He did not know what the sound meant. To him, it was only a soft electronic click, far beneath the other noises filling Spanish Town before dawn. Rain rattled against the roof of his taxi. A baby cried inside an apartment 2 streets away. Water rushed to a blocked drain. A man in the next yard whispered into his phone that he had never loved anybody else, while a woman standing behind him silently lifted a frying pan. Malik turned the key in the ignition and muttered that some matters were better left unheard. He had spent most of his life trying not to listen. As a child, he heard termites inside wood and identified relatives by their footsteps before they entered the yard. His grandmother called it a gift. His mother called it imagination. By adulthood, Malik had built his own treatment. Thick headphones, loud music, and a taxi engine vibrating beneath him for 12 hours a day. That morning, distance stopped protecting him. He had agreed to drive Sister Pearl from Spanish Town to her daughter's house in Halfway Tree before the weather worsened. Sister Pearl arrived carrying 2 shopping bags, a large Bible, and a covered pot. She guarded more carefully than the Bible. She climbed into the back seat and announced that if the hurricane intended to take her roof, it would have to take her and the curry goat together. Malik told her the storm was not moving. "Storm don't park," she said. "People park. Trouble park. Storm pass through. Tell that to Kendra." Kendra sounds stubborn from the first advisory. Under ordinary circumstances, Malik would have laughed. Instead, he gripped the steering wheel. Something had opened inside his head. He heard radios playing in hundreds of houses at once. He heard emergency crews shouting over engines. He heard the strained cables of a transmission tower west of the city. Farther away, beyond any possible reach of human hearing, he heard waves striking the coast of Portland. Then voices began whispering the same sentence. A child in St. Thomas said it in his sleep. An old woman in Clarendon spoke it to an empty room. A fisherman off the coast of Portland shouted it into the wind. The island is calling its children home. Malik slammed his foot on the brake. Sister Pearl grabbed the pot before it overturned. Young man, if you mash up my dinner, hurricane will be the least of your problems. Malik barely heard her. Beneath the voices, a secure radio channel had come alive. The transmission was far away and electronically scrambled, but Malik heard the actual vibrations of the speakers in the room where it was playing. A woman issued instructions in a measured voice. Kingston event confirmed. Probable healer. Recovery team to Metropolitan Hospital. Subject is Dr. Amoya Bennett. Do not permit physical contact. A man asked whether the doctor was dangerous. The woman answered, all unregistered Yardborn are considered dangerous. Malik's hands went cold. He had never heard the word before. Yardborn. Yet some buried part of him recognized it. Another transmission followed. Spanish Town residence remains unlocated. Auditory class suspected. Begin wideband suppression. A tone shrieked through Malik's skull. He cried out and clutched both ears. The taxi windows trembled. Sister Pearl leaned forward, alarm replacing irritation. Malik, what happened to you? Blood ran from his left nostril. The high-frequency pulse swept across Spanish Town again, searching for a reaction. It had found one. On the hidden map beneath the ministry, a second red marker began flashing. Sister Pearl pressed a clean handkerchief beneath Malik's nose. Drive, she ordered. I need to take you home. You need to move before whoever hunting you reach this road. Malik stared at her in the mirror. Sister Pearl sat back with the Bible on her lap and the curry goat secured between her feet. You think your grandmother never told me? She asked. That woman couldn't keep a secret after one glass of sorrel. Another voice crossed the secure channel. Recovery vehicles were approaching the hospital. Malik shifted into gear. Hold the pot, he said. Sister Pearl smiled grimly. Now you're talking sense. Chapter 3. What the sea remembered. In Manchonil, the sea had moved away from the shore. Reid stood beside his overturned canoe and watched the water withdraw beyond the reef. Fish thrashed on exposed sand. Boat settled against the seabed, and the air tasted of metal. His mother Celia shouted from their veranda for him to come inside, but Andre remained where he was. Something beneath the horizon called him by an older name, a sound like thunder rolling through a cave. He had dreamed of it since his father disappeared inside a storm that appeared on no forecast. Search crews found Daniel Reid's undamaged boat 3 days later, but they never found Daniel. Afterward, Celia forbade anyone from calling him Storm, the nickname his father had given him as a baby. Now the clouds above Manchonil turned in a perfect circle. Andre! His mother's warning was swallowed by a deeper roar. The sea returned. A wall of water rose beyond the reef, higher than the coconut trees. Inside it, Kamar Douglas and his 15-year-old son were trapped in a disabled fishing boat, rolling toward the rocks. Andre raised one hand. The gesture was instinctive, almost foolish. No person could stop what was coming. The wave stopped anyway. Thousands of tons of seawater hung above the bay. Andre felt the hurricane turn in 63 miles away, furious and trapped. The pressure drove him to his knees. He clenched his raised hand and pulled it sideways. Wind slammed across the water. The enormous wave divided. One half broke against the reef. The other collapsed harmlessly along the empty beach. Kamar's boat settled upright in the channel between them. Rain struck Andre's face. He lowered his hand. The clouds lowered with it. For the first time since dawn, the people behind him made no sound. Andre turned slowly. His mother stood at the edge of the road, one hand covering her mouth. Beside her was Miss Inez Daly. Miss Inez was 74, 5 feet tall, and feared by nearly everyone who had stolen fruit from her yard. She delivered babies, prepared bush remedies, and refused to explain why birds gathered outside her house at midnight. She carried a glass basin filled with rainwater. The water inside it was perfectly still. "You took long enough," she told Andre. Celia shot her a furious look. "This is not the time. This is exactly the time. Look at the sky." A drone hovered above the bay, a red light blinking beneath it. Miss Inez dipped 2 fingers into the basin and drew a circle across the surface. The machine turned away as though blinded and crashed into a stand of bamboo. "With water?" Andre asked. Miss Inez clicked her tongue. Water was remembering before people invented books. Celia seized Andre's arm and pulled him toward the house. Inside, she removed a rusted biscuit tin from beneath her bed. It held old photographs, blue cloth, a silver-veined stone, and a government identification card bearing his father's face. Across the top of the card were the words, "Office of Unusual Affairs." "He worked for the government?" Andre asked. Celia shook her head. At first, then he understood what they were doing. He was weatherborn, like you. Andre looked toward the window as thunder rolled over the bay. "Is he alive?" The silence answered before his mother did. "I don't know," she said, "but the storm that took him felt like this one." Miss Inez tied the strip of blue cloth around Andre's wrist. Symbols had been stitched along one edge in faded gold thread. Andre pulled back. "I don't deal with Obeah." Miss Inez's eyes hardened. People use that word for everything they fear and everything they do not understand. My grandmother used her knowledge to protect women in childbirth and guide lost children home. Power is not wicked because somebody taught you to be frightened of its name. She tightened the knot. This cannot make you stronger. It may help you remember who you are when somebody tries to make you forget. Outside, engines approached along the wet road, not police cars, heavier vehicles. Andre felt the air compress around them. Miss Inez lifted her basin. "The office found Kingston first," she said, "a healer. Then Spanish Town, a listener. Now you. How do you know?" "Because the island is loud this morning." She opened the back door. "Go west. Find the healer before they carry her below the mountain." Andre looked at his mother. Celia's fear was unmistakable, but so was the decision behind it. She handed him his father's identification card. "Bring back the truth," she said. The first black vehicle turned onto their road. Andre stepped into the rain. Wind gathered around him like an animal recognizing its master. Chapter 4. The Office of Unusual Affairs. The Office of Unusual Affairs did not officially exist. Its headquarters occupied 3 underground levels beneath an ordinary government records building in Kingston. At 6:30 that morning, Director Celeste Grant stood before a digital map containing 3 red lights. Kingston, Spanish Town, Portland. A 4th light flickered briefly in St. Elizabeth, then disappeared. Celeste folded her arms. "The resonance is spreading faster than our models predicted." Minister Elias Vale stood behind her, immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the weather. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with silver at his temples and a voice that made every statement sound reasonable. "Our models were based on sleeping bloodlines," he said. "The storm is waking them." On the main screen, the hospital recording replayed. Amoya placed her hands on the child. Gold light filled the resuscitation room. The boy recovered. Amoya fell. Celeste watched it for the 5th time. She absorbed the trauma. "A full transference healer," Vale said. "The first confirmed in 31 years. If we take her immediately, The hospital staff will ask questions. Then give them an answer they can survive. Stress-induced collapse, equipment error, contaminated footage. People accept ordinary lies when the truth asks too much of them. Tiny cracks spread through Celeste's glass tablet. The office had discovered her ability to reshape glass at 17 and offered her a choice between recruitment and indefinite observation. Minister Vale stepped closer. The cracks stopped. Celeste felt the power drain from her fingers. The familiar silence of his presence settled over her body. Vale's own classification appeared in no database, but everyone in the lower levels knew what he could do. Around him, gifts became ordinary. "You have reservations?" he said. "I have operational concerns." "Of course." He turned toward the storm display. Hurricane Kendra rotated over the sea like an eye refusing to blink. 31 years ago, a weather event awakened 12 bloodlines in a single night. We lost 7 people because this office hesitated. One of those people was Daniel Reid. I will not repeat the mistake. Celeste looked at the red light over Portland. Daniel Reid did not die during recovery. He escaped. Vale's expression did not change. And look what followed. He enlarged the map. Thin gold lines appeared beneath Jamaica, connecting every parish like veins. This country sits on a network we barely understand. For generations, the gifted used it without discipline. Maroon listeners, revival healers, weather workers, root keepers, men who walked through fire and women who carried messages in dreams. Imagine what Jamaica could become if that power were coordinated. Protected, Vale smiled. Untouchable. Celeste studied him. And who controls it? The elected government? The glass tablet gave a faint sound in her hand. A hairline crack appeared down its center. Vale had lied. Whether he noticed the crack or not, he gave no sign. "Bring Dr. Bennett in alive," he said. "The others are secondary." The listener may already know we're coming. Then make sure what he hears frightens him. Fear scatters people. Once they are alone, they are easy to collect. He left the operations floor. Only after the lift doors closed did Celeste's power return. The tablet shattered in her hand. Chapter 5. The Healer Wakes. Amoya regained consciousness with the taste of blood in her mouth. She lay in a private hospital room. Rain streaked the window. An oxygen tube rested beneath her nose, and every breath stabbed the right side of her chest. Simone sat beside the bed. "Nico?" Amoya asked. "Stable, more than stable. Doctors can't find half the injuries he came in with." "His lung?" "Clear. Yours, on the other hand, now looks like you were in the car with him." Amoya tried to sit up. "That's impossible." "Yes, today seems committed to that team." Simone lowered her voice. "2 men from the ministry came for the security recording. Administration gave it to them. Now there are people downstairs asking for you." "Police?" "They didn't say. They also brought their own ambulance." The door opened. A broad-shouldered man in a rain-darkened suit stepped inside and showed his identification. Detective Inspector Kareem Blake, Major Investigations Division. He looked at Simone, then at Amoya. "Dr. Bennett, I need to ask you about what happened in the emergency department." Simone stood between him and the bed. "She needs rest. She needs to leave." The urgency in his voice silenced them both. Kareem closed the door. 3 people downstairs claim they are transferring you to a secure medical facility because you were exposed to a dangerous substance. Your hospital administrator says he requested the transfer. He did not. Amoya studied him. "How do you know?" Kareem's gaze shifted toward the window. "I know when people deliberately lie." Simone exhaled. "Naturally. Why should anything be normal today?" Kareem ignored the remark. "The men downstairs believe you did something to that child." Amoya remembered the heat moving into her hands. She remembered Nico's damaged body opening before her mind like a book. "I saved him. I believe you. You don't know me." Truth sounds different. So does a lie. You believe what you said. That is not the same as it being true. No, but your X-ray is helping. He placed a tablet on the bed. 2 images appeared side by side. One belonged to Nico before the resuscitation. The other belonged to Amoya 30 minutes later. The injuries were nearly identical. Amoya stared at them. Her grandmother came back to her in fragments. Mother Violet Bennett had been a district midwife in St. Mary. People said she could stop bleeding with her hands. Amoya's mother dismissed the stories as country exaggeration, but Mother Violet never denied them. Once when Amoya was 12, her grandmother held her palms and said, "If the warmth ever wakes in you, never let anybody decide whose pain you must carry." Amoya had forgotten those words until now. Heavy footsteps entered the corridor. Kareem turned toward the door. "They're here." "How many?" Simone asked. 6 outside, more at the lifts. "You can hear lies, not footsteps." I was a police officer first. He opened a cabinet and pulled out a spare white coat. "Can you walk, doctor?" Amoya swung her legs over the side of the bed. Pain tore through her ribs, but she remained upright. "Apparently, I can do impossible things. Walking should be manageable." Simone helped her into the court. The first knock struck the door. A man's voice announced that he represented the Ministry of Health. Kareem listened. "Lie," he said. The man claimed he had authorization from the hospital director. "Lie." He said no harm would come to Dr. Bennett. Kareem's face changed. "Big lie." Simone pointed toward a service door behind the bathroom. Renovation workers used it to access an unfinished wing. Kareem opened it. Amoya paused. "What about you?" "I'm going downstairs to become professionally inconvenient." The outer door shook under a second blow. Amoya followed Simone into the dark service corridor. Behind them, Kareem drew his weapon and asked the supposed health officials to show their hands. The storm swallowed the first gunshot. Chapter 6. The taxi at the side door. Malik arrived at the hospital with Sister Pearl still in the back seat. He had tried twice to leave her somewhere safe. She refused both times. "Your hearing bring us into this," she said. "My common sense may be the only thing that bring us out." He could not argue with that. Alarms rang on 3 floors. Boots struck stairwells. The suppression tones swept through the hospital grounds every 40 seconds, each pass driving a needle of pain behind Malik's eyes. He lowered every window in the taxi. Rain sprayed across the seats. Sister Pearl covered the curry goat with her Bible. "If this pot turn over, I am joining the government side." Malik closed his eyes. Sound separated inside his mind. He found the recovery team by their radios and found Simone and Amoya inside the unfinished wing. Amoya's heartbeat was wrong. It fluttered, paused, then hurried to catch itself. Her breathing scraped through an injured lung. Malik drove around the building and stopped beside an unmarked service exit. The door opened less than a minute later. Simone emerged first, supporting a woman in a white coat. 2 armed agents entered the corridor behind them. Malik leaned across the passenger seat and threw open the door. "Dr. Bennett!" Amoya froze. "Who are you?" "The man trying to keep you out of the government ambulance. Get in." One of the agents raised a weapon. Sister Pearl opened her door and hurled the first object she could reach. Her large Bible struck the agent across the face. "Move!" she shouted. Simone pushed Amoya into the passenger seat. Malik accelerated. Before the door fully closed, the taxi struck a puddle and fishtailed onto the main road. Black vehicles followed. Amoya held one arm against her injured ribs and stared at Malik. "You know my name. So do the people behind us." "That is not an answer. I heard them talking about you from Spanish Town." "On a radio?" "Through a wall, inside a building I've never seen, from more than 10 miles away." Amoya looked toward Sister Pearl. The older woman retrieved her Bible from the floor and inspected the bent cover. "Don't look at me," she said. My only power is knowing when somebody talking foolishness. A black sport utility vehicle pulled beside them. Malik heard the electric motor lowering its rear window. He ducked before the agent fired. The shot broke the back window. Sister Pearl lifted the curry pot protectively. "All right," she said. "Now I take this personally." Malik turned sharply through a narrow side street. The larger vehicle overshot the corner, but another appeared ahead of them. "They're coordinating," he said. "Every road toward Halfway Tree is covered." "Can you hear an open route?" Amoya asked. "Roads don't make sound." "Vehicles do. People do. Find the space between them." Malik glanced at her. Despite the pain draining the color from her face, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions, while others panicked. He widened his hearing until tires, engines, barricades, and overflowing drains became points on an invisible map. There, a route through Mountain View, east toward the old road, then north before the next recovery unit could close the gap. He turned the taxi. The suppression tone struck again. Malik screamed. The car swerved toward a concrete barrier. Amoya grabbed the wheel. The instant her hand touched his, warmth entered Malik's skin. His pain eased. Dark blood appeared beneath Amoya's left ear. She released him at once. "You took it," Malik said. "I didn't mean to. Put it back." "That is not how it works. You discovered how it works 2 hours ago. Then today is a poor day to demand expertise." Sister Pearl leaned between the seats. "Save the argument until people stop shooting at us." Malik heard another engine approaching from the east. It was old, uneven, and surrounded by something that did not sound like machinery. Wind moved with it. Chapter 7. 3 Red Lights. Andre reached Kingston shortly after midday. Floods, fallen trees, and barricades blocked the approaches from the east, but the wind showed him openings. Water lowered around his pickup. Gush shifted branches just enough for him to pass. He asked, and the weather answered. The blue cloth around his wrist grew warmer as he approached the city. Then he saw the taxi. It burst through an intersection with 2 black vehicles behind it. One agent leaned through a window with a weapon. Andre didn't know who was inside, but the air did. The gifted. Andre pulled his pickup across the road. The first black vehicle accelerated toward him. He stepped out into the rain. "This had better work," he told the sky. Lightning struck the road. The blast lifted the pursuing vehicle and killed every engine in the intersection. Malik's taxi rolled to a stop inches from Andre's pickup. Amoya climbed out first, exhausted and unimpressed by the lightning burning a hole in the road. "Did you do that?" "I was aiming beside them," Andre said. "You missed. Nobody died." Malik stepped out, one hand pressed to his bleeding nose. 5 agents in the first vehicle, 4 in the second, more coming from the west. Andre frowned. "How can you know that?" "Same way you know where to throw lightning. I just told you I don't." Sister Pearl emerged with her covered pot. "Introductions later. We need shelter." The blue cloth on Andre's wrist pulled toward the north, tightening against his skin. Miss Inez had told him to find the healer before they carried her below the mountain. "I know a place," he said. Wind erased their tracks as the cloth guided Andre into an abandoned garment factory and down a stairwell. At the bottom was a blue door marked with the same gold symbols stitched around his wrist. Amoya touched one of them. The door opened. Inside were emergency supplies and boxes labeled with the names of Jamaican parishes. A hand-painted map covered one wall, its gold lines connecting 14 circles across the island. Malik stared at it. "I've heard these lines." "Lines don't make sound," Amoya reminded him. "Those do." Sister Pearl set down her pot. "Your grandmother brought me to a room like this once," she told Malik. "People called them shelters. Not from hurricanes, from the office." Andre placed his father's identification card on a dusty table. Amoya picked it up. "Daniel Reid, Weather Operations Division." "My father," Andre said. He disappeared 31 years ago. Malik's face tightened. I heard somebody mention that name this morning. A man called Vale said your father escaped. Andre crossed the room in 2 steps. Escape from what? I don't know. Listen again. It doesn't work like choosing a station. Then learn. The air stirred around Andre. Dust spiraled from the floor. Amoya moved between them. Stop. Whatever this office is, it wants us frightened and separated. We will not help it. Her knees weakened. Malik caught her before she fell. The injury she had taken from Nico was worsening. Every breath had become shallow. Blood marked the edge of her white coat. Sister Pearl opened one of the medical boxes. Can you heal yourself? Amoya shook her head. I don't think so. That is a serious design flaw. Despite everything, Andre laughed. Malik raised one hand. Beneath the rain, he heard a low vibration under the floor. The shelter's lights dimmed. The gold lines on the wall faded. They found us, he said. A man's calm voice came through a speaker hidden above the door. Dr. Bennett, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Reid, my name is Elias Vale. I would prefer that our first meeting not become violent. Andre raised his hands. Wind pressed against the walls. Nothing happened. The air had gone dead. Malik reached for the city beyond the room. He heard only the ordinary rain directly above them. Amoya touched her own ribs and felt no answering warmth. Their powers were gone. The blue cloth around Andre's wrist was the only thing that remained warm. The door opened. Minister Vale entered alone. Chapter 8. The Man Who Made Miracles Quiet. Elias Vale looked less like a captor than a man late for a meeting. Armed agents waited beyond the doorway. He studied Amoya first. You have Mother Violet's eyes. Amoya's body went still. You knew my grandmother. She helped build this shelter and establish the office. My grandmother was a midwife. She was many things. Vale turned toward Andre. Your father stood where you are standing now, equally angry, equally certain that power without structure was freedom. Andre lunged at him. Without the wind, he was only a strong man crossing a small room. 2 agents seized him before he reached Vale and forced him against the wall. The blue cloth flashed once beneath Andre's sleeve. Vale noticed. For the first time, his calm expression fractured. Where did you get that? Andre smiled through clenched teeth. From a university professor. Sister Pearl laughed before she could stop herself. Vale's gaze moved to Malik. A listener without training eventually loses the ability to separate one voice from another. We could have helped your grandmother. Malik's anger overcame his fear. You hunted her. We offered her service. That isn't what she called it. History depends on who survives to describe it. Vale returned his attention to Amoya. You are dying, doctor. You took injuries your body cannot carry. Come with us, and our physicians can stabilize you. Kareem's warning returned to her. No harm would come to Dr. Bennett. Big lie. And if I refuse, she asked. Vale glanced toward the armed agents. Your companions will be detained. Their families will be questioned. This facility will be erased, along with everyone who knows it exists. Sister Pearl lifted the lid of her pot. Minister, before you erase me, you want some curry goat. Long morning. Even Vale seemed briefly uncertain. No, thank you. Good. Wasn't offering you any. One of the agents hid a smile. Amoya looked at Malik and Andre. They had known one another for less than an hour, yet the choice before her felt horribly familiar. Whose pain would she carry? Her grandmother's warning had never forbidden sacrifice. It had forbidden surrendering the choice. I will go, Amoya said. They remain here. Their families remain untouched. Vale nodded. Agreed. From the corridor came the faint click of a pistol being lowered. Malik could no longer hear beyond the room, but he did not need a gift to recognize a lie. Amoya, don't. She faced him. You heard them coming when nobody else could. Use that. Find out what this storm is. She turned to Andre. And find your father. Agents placed a metal restraint around her wrists. The inner surface was lined with the same dull alloy used in the office corridors. As they led her toward the door, the blue cloth around Andre's wrist began to smoke. He heard Miss Inez's voice as clearly as if she stood beside him. "Remember who you are when somebody tries to make you forget." Andre stopped fighting the silence Vale had forced upon the room. Instead, he reached beneath it. He found the smallest movement of air, the breath leaving Amoya's injured lung. He followed it through the doorway, up the stairwell, and into the storm outside. The blue cloth burned gold. Andre spoke the older name the sea had given him. Thunder answered. The building shook. Vale turned sharply. His suppression field flickered. For less than 1 second, every gift returned. Malik heard the agents' hearts. Andre felt the hurricane, and Amoya felt the pain in the corridor. And Sister Pearl threw the entire pot of curry goat at the lights. Darkness exploded across the shelter. Andre called the wind. It tore through the stairwell and knocked the agents from their feet. Malik moved through the darkness by sound, pulling Sister Pearl toward the rear passage. Amoya reached for the restraint at her wrists, but Vale caught her shoulder. His power closed around her again. Andre shouted her name. "Go!" Amoya answered. The ceiling cracked. Rain poured into the shelter. A second bolt of lightning struck somewhere above, and the rear wall split open along a seam hidden beneath the parish map. Malik dragged Andre through the opening seconds before concrete collapsed behind them. They emerged in a storm drain several streets away. The last thing Malik heard before Vale's vehicles pulled from the ruined factory was Amoya's heartbeat, weak, unsteady, but alive. Chapter 9. Below the Mountain. The convoy carried Amoya north through Kingston as evening fell. Hurricane Kendra still had not moved. The city prepared for a direct strike that refused to arrive. Rumors spread of lightning rising from the road, a man dividing the sea in Portland, and a child whose broken body repaired itself beneath a doctor's hands. The government denied every story. Amoya sat restrained in the rear of an armored vehicle. Vale sat opposite her. "You could have taken all of us," she said. "Eventually. You wanted me first. Why? Weather can destroy. Listeners can discover. Healers can change the balance between life and death. Governments have always valued that distinction." "You mean powerful people want to live forever?" Vale smiled faintly. "You're direct, like Violet. Stop speaking as though you loved her." For the first time, something like grief appeared in his face. "I did." Amoya listened to the rain striking the roof. "What happened 31 years ago?" Vale looked toward the darkened window. "Your grandmother believed the network beneath Jamaica was alive. She believed the gifts were the island's way of protecting itself. Daniel Reid believed her. They attempted to open all 14 parish sites at once. And the sky opened first. Did Daniel die? No." The answer came too quickly. Vale continued before she could question him. "He entered the storm and never returned. Violet closed the network, scattered the surviving Yardborn, and erased our records. She believed secrecy would protect you. Instead, it left your generation unprepared." "For what?" The convoy began climbing. Through the window, Amoya saw the lights of Kingston receding below. Ahead, the blue mountains vanished into cloud. Vale leaned closer. "For the thing Daniel found inside the hurricane." The vehicle entered a tunnel. When it emerged, they were underground. The facility below the mountain was far older than the government offices in Kingston. Its walls were carved from dark stone. Symbols like those on Andre's cloth surrounded a circular metal door. The restraints were removed only after Amoya entered a glass-walled room. Vale's suppression field remained beyond the glass, close enough to keep her power quiet. A physician examined her injuries. Medication dulled the pain, but did not repair the damage. Vale watched from the other side. Behind him, a wall of screens came alive. 14 parish circles glowed across the map of Jamaica. 3 were bright red, Kingston, St. Catherine, Portland. One after another, the remaining circles began changing from gold to red. St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, Westmoreland, St. James, Hanover, Trelawney, Manchester, St. Anne, St. Mary, St. Thomas, St. Andrew. The final light appeared over St. Andrew. Then every screen in the facility flickered. Vale's face lost its composure. That cannot be happening. Amoya pushed herself upright. You said the storm was waking bloodlines. Not all of them. Not at once. The lights went out. In the darkness, Amoya felt warmth return to her palms. Not because Vale had moved, because something stronger than his silence had entered the mountain. A voice filled the facility. It came through no speaker. It spoke in a language Amoya had never heard, yet she understood every word. The healer has returned. The first door is open. Then another voice answered from somewhere inside the prison. A man's voice, roughened by years and distance. Amoya Bennett, it said. If you can hear me, do not let Vale open the 14th door. Amoya stepped toward the glass. Vale stared into the darkness beyond the corridor. She saw fear enter his face. Who is that? She asked. Vale did not answer. The man behind the mountain spoke again. Tell Andre his father is alive. Epilogue, the living tongue. At the University of the West Indies, Zuri Morgan woke with 14 languages in her mouth. She sat upright in her dormitory room as rain beat against the windows. Her laptop had turned itself on. Across the screen moved lines of writing she recognized without ever having studied them. Some were African, some European. Some belonged to the first people of the Caribbean. Others were so old that no book in the university library contained their names. Every line carried the same message. Find the healer. Zuri whispered the words aloud. She spoke them in English, Spanish, Akan, Yoruba, Mandarin, Hindi, Arabic, Jamaican patois, and languages that should have vanished centuries before her birth. Then a final voice rose from beneath them all. It sounded like an island waking from sleep. Zuri understood that voice too. It said one word, Yardborn. Outside, Hurricane Kendra finally began to move. Not toward Jamaica, around it. The storm widened into a perfect circle, enclosing the entire island within its eye. And beneath all 14 parishes, sealed doors began to open. End of episode 1. Yardborn will continue in episode 2, the 14th door.